This is day 2 of tracking for Jill. Like in day 1, I put the harness on her near my car and walked her over. It's probably maybe about 50 feet from the car to the start of the track. So walked her over in her collar, and now I'm switching over to her harness. And as I walk her up, I'm still walking her up by the collar. I'm trying to be, right from the start as I'm laying this foundation, I'm trying to be very clear to the dog when we're tracking and when we're not tracking. You'll see me do the same thing at the end. When she reaches the end of the track, I'll feed her, and then as I walk her away from the track, I'm going to switch her back to her collar and walk her away from the track in her collar. So when the harness is on, they're expecting to track, and when the harness comes off, then they're done tracking. And you can see, just like as I described in yesterday's track, I don't want to be able to look down the track and see these targets. There's a little bit of a line where we've walked because it's a pretty damp, foggy day. I'm also not too fussy about having pristine areas to track in. I don't want something where there's a lot of heavy traffic and a lot of distractions as I lay this foundation, but I'm not concerned about going somewhere where there's absolutely no people. This is a parking lot. I'm bordered on one side and then a bike path on the other, so there's a good chance that somebody may have walked through here. I don't worry too much about that unless it's a heavy amount of contamination. Again, like yesterday, I'm putting a fair amount of tension on her, and that's really my only role. Is I want these spacing to be close enough from the start that all she has to do is just go down the track. If I have to manage her down the track from the start, then I'm laying an incorrect foundation. When she gets off just a little bit, all I do is stop. She's teaching herself right from the beginning, and I'll just stop and let her work her way back to the track. A couple of paces back, I took some extra food out of my pocket, and now because I put those extra pieces of food at the end of the track, now I have a chance to get around in front of her. And the reason I'm coming around in front of her is I'm prepping her for article indications. I'm going to get around in front of her when I feed her, so that right from the start I'm shaping her stopping and waiting at the article while I get up and feed her. And you can see I've switched over out of my harness and back into the collar. And then I try and feed her away from the track because I don't want to confuse her if she continues to try and track at that point and me pulling her away. I want to keep things very black and white for her. I want to get her away from the track and not have to be pulling her off the track, so that you're basically telling her the message that sometimes I want her to track and sometimes I don't. I always want her to track.